What is woke? Very often you hear in the undertone, it doesn't exist. And if it exists, if you can give examples of very flagrant examples of what woke is, they say, well, that's a byproduct of normal emancipation movements. Probably if you would have lived in the time of women's suffrage, you would have called that woke. Or the social movement of laborers in the 19th century, you would have called that woke. Now you're against, of course, rights that are claimed by minority groups in society. You use woke just to be conservative, who wants to defend his own domination of society. I'm well aware that some groups in our society need to get a lot more chances from society to get equal chances in society. I'm all for that. Progressive media have promoted the idea that the only problem in the polarization we're living through is the extreme right. It's a very strange polarization. Normally, if you have polarization, there must be two sides. It always takes two to tango. In this polarization, there's only one side. It's extreme right. There is nothing fueling extreme right. It's fueling itself just by combating normality, combating progress, civilization. You're either on the right side of history or you're extreme right. So if you're critical, the usual reaction, even if you're making quite rational and solid points, is, well, okay, maybe you're right on some things, but shut up, please. Because what you're saying will eventually promote the extreme right. And you're on the wrong side of history. There's only one right side of history, and that's the woke side. Woke makes postmodern thinking and wokeism makes a clear rupture with modernity. Postmodern thinking essentially robs our respublica, our society, samenleving, as we say in Dutch, living together. It's a word in Dutch that says it all. Samenleving, society is literally translated in English. It's a living together that needs glue. It needs a metaphysical framework, and postmodernity attacks that metaphysical framework from the idea that at the end of the road, every framework is constructed by powerful people to oppress less powerful people. If you say that Western identity, Western civilization is in essence a construct of powerful people to oppress less powerful people, then Western civilization is the beginning of every problem in the world. So it's very logical, next step, woke, maybe the end of Western civilization will be the beginning of every solution that the world needs. Woke will not lead us to a new synthesis. It is not a constructive movement, it is a destructive movement. It is a vengeful and bitter movement, and it will destroy our past. That is an obsession of postmodern woke thinking. Everything in our past is like a black mirror. If you look behind us, all we can see is oppression, slavery, capitalism destroying the world, Western society that has done everything wrong. Everything was wrong. Our religion was wrong, our identity was wrong, everything we did in the world was basically wrong. We'll have to say sorry for 3,000 years in the future. They attack the past, and why is that an obsession? Because if you want to destroy a building, it's always very smart to start in the cellar. And the rest is, of course, our identity. The essence of the attack on our past is the attack on our presence, on the idea that we are still a respublica. That is what they want to destroy. This has taken the form of what I would call auto-racism. They attack the past, they attack our identity, they attack the idea of equality and freedom. Equality and freedom are our basic software since the French Revolution. These are the basic values that drive our civilization. But I think they only can function if they're in a metaphysical framework. Absolute freedom does not lead to equality. That's the right of the strongest. Freedom and equality have to be in a metaphysical framework. If you attack that framework, freedom becomes the enemy. And equality does not become the product of freedom. The freedom that was granted us as citizens in the 19th century to work towards equality. And so many movements have done it. Women's rights movements, labor rights movements, language movements. Under the cupola of the freedom that we got of citizens, we are protected against the state, the oppression of the state. Generations has fought towards equality. This has changed. Freedom now is the enemy because it's an instrument of the dominating class, and equality has become a kind of revenge. The one thing they do not grant the Respublica, identity, is almost forced upon the minority groups. They have an identity, the victim identity, and people are reduced to that aspect of their individuality. If everything that we have done in the past have had a bad outcome, then very probably everything that we will do in the future will have a bad outcome as well. Certainly if the dominating group is not cast aside. And I see, of course, in the climate movement very much the woke intoxication. Climate is, of course, a very real problem and we should address it. But the way that this has become a religious way of thinking, where at the end of the day there will be the apocalypse and everybody today has to convert to the right faith. And that's not only being mindful of the climate, but being mindful of everything that wokeism prescribes. They are attacking the idea in progress, which will cost Europe, I think, a bundle. They attack every basis in our society that protects us from sheer materialism. If there is no metaphysica anymore that can be defended, the only thing that will be left is physica, material things. The power of imagining a community is being put to zero. The creative power of identity, whether religious or civic, is put to zero. And the only thing that's left, of course, is the creative power of money. And that creative power of money has grown out of hand. I don't think this was the intention of postmodern thinking, but it certainly is the consequence of it. 7th point of attack is, of course, our geopolitical relevance in the world. If you adopt a way of thinking in which you are the bad guy, then probably everybody else in the world is the good guy. For decades now, Europe has missed almost every train that is important in geopolitical politics. We did not see what happened in Islam. We did not see what happened in China. We didn't even see what Vladimir Putin was up to, although it was pretty obvious. If you look at yourself in a black mirror and you are forced to look at the rest of the world in a golden mirror, then you miss out on quite a lot. Postmodern thinking, wokeism, isn't the solution, but it is part of the problem. In that polarization, it does take two to tango, and they are the dance partner of extreme right. Extreme right does not fuel on normality, it fuels on wokeism. And wokeism is not the logical consequence of modernity, it goes against modernity. Wokeism has given up our belief in universalism, our belief in human progress, and our belief in true equality thinking. And therefore, I think it must be combated. I plea for the return to the values on which the modern nation-states were founded and on which they have grown. I hold a plea for the return to true tolerance. I hold a plea for inclusive citizenship. Citizenship that can carry an eternal changing identity, like the ship of Theseus. If you know the story, he left with that ship on his wonderful journey, many adventures, and everything on his ship was changed. Every wood, every nail, every sail on his journey was replaced. But the ship still was recognizable for everybody who was on it. All the passengers saw it as the instrumental vehicle that would get them through the journey. A ship that does not go or does not know where it's going, even the best wind will not carry it home. I think that wokeism has put us on that very bad course.